unfold.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are undertaking a very personal deep dive.
Very personal.
We're drilling down into a single, intensely unpleasant sensation. I mean that shiver of dread, that gut feeling of wrongness you get.
Yeah.
The feeling you get when something is almost but not quite human.
It's so specific.
It is. We're talking about, that cheap store mannequin that seems to be looking at you, or that overly realistic animation that doesn't blink quite right.
Or that deeply, deeply unsettling porcelain doll in your grandmother's attic. We've all been there.
Exactly.
Today, we are attempting a cartography of unease. For over 50 years, this phenomenon has been known as the Uncanny Valley.
Bukimi no Tani in the original Japanese.
Right. And for most of that time, it was treated as a simple engineering problem, a design hurdle for robotics and CGI artists to overcome.
But that's not our mission today.
Not at all. Our mission is to move entirely beyond aesthetics. We've synthesized sources arguing that this visceral revulsion is just. It's far too potent and universal to be a matter of taste. Instead, it's a deep-seated biological mechanism. We are uncovering the evolutionary roots of the uncanny.
Okay, let's unpack this paradoxical concept. We have to start with Masahiro Mori's work from 1970.
The foundational text.
He observed this. Well, it's a nonlinear relationship between how human-like an entity is and how much affinity we feel toward it.
Shinwakan, as he called it.
Right, Shinwakan. And we generally like simple representations. A cute cartoon robot, say WALL-E, sits really high on that graph.
We love it. Absolutely.
But as you approach perfect realism, right before you hit that 100% mark, the affinity doesn't just level off.
No, it collapses.
And catastrophically.
And it doesn't just dip into neutral territory.
It plummets. It goes deep into the negative zone, generating dread, visceral revulsion, and this acute cognitive dissonance.
And what's critical here, and what our sources really hammer home, is the sheer immediate biological impact of that collapse.
Yes. This isn't some mild intellectual dislike. This is a full system alarm.
We're talking about genuine fight or flight signals. We're talking goosebumps, piloerection, where the hair on your arms literally stands up. We're talking cold sweat and an overwhelming instinctual urge to withdraw or even to flee.
And that kind of strong, ancient physical reaction that suggests this is so much more than a cultural preference.
Or a passing trend in visual media.
It strongly indicates, as our sources rigorously argue, that this is a core survival instinct. This is a defense system forged in the crucible of the Pleistocene era.
Hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Right.
So if we accept that, if we accept the universality of the feeling and the biological potency of the reaction,
which seems hard to deny,
then we absolutely must transition the Uncanny Valley from being a minor robotics flaw to a fundamental biological adaptation.
Okay.
We have to assume that anything that triggers such an immediate system-wide avoidance signal must have historically protected Homo sapiens from specific lethal threats.
And crucially, threats that bore a disturbing resemblance to ourselves.
That's the key. Almost us, but not quite.
So what's the big picture then? The core finding that synthesizes all this material is that the Uncanny Valley is what biologists call a cognitive spandrel. And I find that term fascinating because it suggests this specific emotion wasn't, engineered for just one purpose.
Right. A spandrel, in evolutionary terms, is a trait that arises not because of direct selection for that trait, but as a side effect or a convergence of other separately selected pressures.
Like in architecture.
Exactly. Think of the triangular space above an archway. It's just a necessary byproduct of the rounded arches below it. It wasn't designed on its own.
It just happens.
Similarly, the uncanny feeling is the simultaneous alarm raised by the convergence of three separate ancient threat detection modules in our brain, all firing at once.
And that's the key takeaway we're calling the triad of terrors.
Correct. The uncanny feeling is the aggregate emotional output when the brain detects cues related to three distinct existential threats. Pathogen avoidance, so plagues.
Okay.
Mortality salience, which is death. And hominid threat, which means our ancient rivals.
This establishes the foundational principle for our entire analysis then, the functional emotion premise.
Yes. Evolution doesn't waste energy on useless emotions. Disgust is highly functional. It prevents us from ingesting toxins and infection.
Fear is functional. It prevents predation.
Therefore, the unique feeling of uncanny, that specific cocktail of fear, disgust, and confusion, It must correspond to a specific, unique class of threat.
A threat that was simultaneously human-like yet fundamentally dangerous.
Exactly. If the entity were clearly non-human, a lion, a spider, it would trigger straightforward fear. If it were clearly inanimate, a rotten piece of fruit, it triggers pure disgust.
But this is in the middle.
Because the uncanny entity occupies that liminal, ambiguous space, almost human, almost alive, almost clean, short-circuits those clear categories. And that triggers this unique composite alarm demanding immediate withdrawal and further urgent categorical assessment.
That provides the perfect framework. So we are going to examine the 4 core hypotheses that flesh out this evolutionary wiring in detail.
Pathogen avoidance, mortality salience, hominid threat, and a fascinating subcategory, psychopathy avoidance.
Get ready to understand why your brain fundamentally hates glitchy CGI.
We have to begin by revisiting Masahiro Mori's foundational work. We need to move beyond just the simple line graph to really understand the geometry of eeriness.
Yeah, it's not just a diagram. Our sources frame it as an ancestral map of where danger lurks.
That's a great way to put it. Mori's coordinates are essential. The x-axis charts increasing human likeness, and the y-axis charts affinity or Shinwakan.
And affinity rises steadily toward human representations.
Yeah.
You know, a basic industrial robot is fine, a stylized cartoon is friendly.
But then it just drops steeply right before the peak, before spiking back up at 100% realism.
But the crucial distinction Mori made, and this is what elevates this whole concept from a graphic design critique into a biological one, is the impact of movement.
Oh, absolutely.
The difference between a static image and a moving image is biologically seismic.
Movement is the single greatest determinant of survival threat. Mori meticulously detailed 2 paths into the valley, depending on activity. He placed the corpse at the bottom of the static trough.
Okay, so that's a passive biological hazard.
Right. It represents decay, rot, contamination risk, but it's physically contained. It's not coming after you.
But then if we look at the moving trough, the deepest point of revulsion, the nadir of the whole graph, is occupied by the zombie, the living dead.
And the zombie plunges even deeper into negative affinity than the static corpse.
So why does adding movement make the threat so much worse?
This differentiation is paramount for survival. A static body signals a risk of contagion that, can be managed through distance.
You can just walk away from it.
You can walk away. A zombie, however, signals an active, mobile biological hazard. It's a moving vector of infection or potentially predation.
It's coming for you.
It is. The brain perceives something that moves wrong as infinitely more dangerous and urgent than something that merely looks wrong. This dynamic anomaly signals a higher priority survival threat.
And Mori's analysis didn't stop at the purely visual, did it? He provided this really powerful hands-on example that demonstrated the profound impact of sensory mismatch.
Tactile dissonance.
Tactile dissonance, yeah. He focused on the experience of touching a myoelectric prosthetic hand. We're talking about high-end prosthetics from the 1960s, like the Vienna hand.
Yeah, and visually, these prosthetics were getting increasingly sophisticated. They might simulate pores, veins, fingerprints, using these realistic polymers.
They look pretty good.
They looked okay, but the illusion shattered the moment you interacted with them physically. Mori observed that the brain, based on the visual input, anticipated warmth.
Sure.
The compliance of soft tissue, the slight responsiveness of a living hand.
But the tactile input delivered the absolute opposite.
The contact delivered cold temperature and a striking lack of muscle tone. Mori described it as a lifeless, boneless grip.
Ugh.
And the brain registered an immediate, profound contradiction. Its prediction, warm, soft, alive, was just obliterated by the sensory data, cold, hard, inert.
And in the ancestral environment, a cold limb lacking muscle tone is an unambiguous, high-stakes signal. There's no room for error there.
It signals one of 2 things, and both mandate immediate retreat. 1, death. It belongs to a corpse, which is a static contamination hazard.
Okay.
Or 2, severe pathology.
Yeah.
The tissue is gangrenous, ischemic, necrotic. This is tissue that is chemically degrading while still attached to a functional body.
And that's maybe even worse.
Much worse. So the uncanny feeling, the eeriness, is the brain's failure to resolve this sensory mismatch. It defaults to the safest option, which is an immediate mandate for withdrawal to avoid potentially lethal contamination.
Which makes perfect sense of Mori's famous warning to designers. He said, if perfection, 100% realism, is impossible.
Retreat immediately to the first peak.
Right. He advised making the machine obviously mechanical, stylized, visibly distinct.
And this is a beautiful parallel to a fundamental biological principle. aposematism.
Explain that.
Think of a poisoned dart frog. It doesn't hide. It's brightly colored. It's advertising its toxicity.
It's saying, I am dangerous.
Exactly. It's safer for the frog to be clearly identifiable as do not eat. Similarly, for a machine, it's safer to be clearly identifiable as other, a visible mechanism, than to be an ambiguous mimic that triggers our deepest, most sensitive defense mechanisms against the sick and the dead.
So we've established the geography of the valley. Now let's plunge into the first and arguably most critical pillar of the triad of terrors. Hypothesis first, the behavioral immune system.
Or pathogen avoidance.
This is the argument that the Uncanny Valley is fundamentally a disease avoidance mechanism.
This hypothesis provides one of the strongest evolutionary explanations for the uncanny response. It argues that the revulsion elicited by these almost human entities is an involuntary activation of what we call the behavioral immune system, the BIS.
Okay, clarify the BIS for us, because I think most people, when they hear immunity, they think T cells, antibodies, that sort of thing.
Right. And that's the physiological immune system. That's our defense after an infection has already occurred. The behavioral immune system is much older. It's a psychological system.
So it's in the brain.
It's in the brain. It's a suite of cognitive and emotional mechanisms that evolved specifically to detect and avoid potential sources of infectious disease before physical contact ever happens. It is an anticipatory defense system focused entirely on prevention.
And the emotional language the BIS uses to enforce its rules.
The disgust. Pure, unadulterated disgust.
Not a learned response.
Not at all. It is a profound survival mechanism. It enforces physical barriers. Nausea, the closing of the mouth and eyes, the rapid withdrawal of the entire body. These are highly effective behaviors protective against airborne, vector-borne, or surface contamination.
And this system's fundamental principle, and this is key to understanding the valley's hypersensitivity, is the false positive advantage.
Absolutely. In the ancestral environment, particularly the Pleistocene, infection was a death sentence. There were no antibiotics, no modern medicines.
A cut could kill you.
A small cut could kill you. So the cost of a false negative failing to avoid an infectious carrier was the ultimate evolutionary penalty.
Right.
Conversely, the cost of a false positive, avoiding a healthy but slightly weird-looking person, was essentially negligible. A little social awkwardness, maybe.
So evolution selected for a detection system that is radically hypersensitive.
Optimized to err on the side of extreme caution. The Uncanny Valley is that high-sensitivity scanner, firing off alarms when it detects even the most subtle, ambiguous visual signatures of disease.
And those subtle signatures map directly onto what critics complain about when looking at bad CGI or realistic androids.
It's a one-to-one mapping.
Our brain is running a diagnostic interpreting design flaws as lethal pathologies.
Exactly. Let's match the uncanny feature to the pathological signal. First, skin texture anomalies.
Well, waxy look.
Right. When critics call early CGI human characters waxy, plastic, or clammy, they're describing a lack of what's called subsurface scattering, the way light penetrates and diffuses under the skin.
It makes skin look alive.
It does. And biologically, this waxy pallor, this loss of translucency, mimics severe conditions like edema, the tautness seen in smallpox lesions, or the loss of sensation and texture in leprosy. It signals a profound biological breakdown.
Then you have the geometrical issues, the sudden, non-fluid glitches of shape.
Asymmetry and disfigurement. When generative AI videos show hands with 6 fingers or a limb dissolving into a background object, it triggers this deep revulsion.
It's deeply unsettling.
Because it resembles traumatic amputation, major congenital deformities, or most urgently, a rapidly progressing necrotic infection like gangrene. Gross asymmetry signals either profound genetic undesirability or an active, destructive, contagious process.
And of course the eyes, the classic dead-eye look that haunts every fictional robot.
Ocular defects. This often manifests as a lack of synchronized movement, insufficient blink rate, or the failure of the eyes to track properly. In biology, this mimics the fixed gaze you see in a coma, severe neurological trauma, or extreme fever states.
It's a sign that the whole system is down.
A lack of responsiveness signals that the central nervous system, the command center of the organism, is fundamentally compromised.
This detailed analysis of visual flaws brings us back to Maury's most reviled entity, the zombie, the nadir of the moving valley. The argument here is that the zombie prototype isn't just folklore, it's an ancient evolutionary memory of the rabies virus.
The zombie is likely the strongest possible expression of the pathogen avoidance hypothesis. Rabies, or lyssavirus, is arguably the perfect ancestral zombie template. It is ancient, it's zoonotic, it's found globally, and historically it is 100% fatal without immediate post-exposure prophylaxis.
And it creates the ultimate uncanny threat because it hijacks a human being. It turns a recognizable member of your kin group into a highly contagious, aggressive monster.
The virus attacks the central nervous system and the symptoms. They map terrifyingly well onto the zombie archetype. Take hydrophobia and the aggressive grimace.
Okay.
Rabies patients suffer from violent, agonizing spasms of their pharyngeal muscles when they attempt to swallow or are even just presented with water.
Wow.
This causes an involuntary baring of the teeth and a facial spasm that looks exactly like a snarl or aggression. Our brain perceives this pathological reflex as an intentional attack.
And that distinction, a reflex that we interpret as intent, that's everything for survival.
Precisely. Furthermore, you have hyperactivity and aggression. The furious form of rabies induces extreme agitation, confusion, and overwhelming physical aggression, which includes, of course, the instinct to bite.
The transmission mechanism.
The mechanism for viral transmission. And finally, the altered gait and movement. The CNS destruction leads to paralysis, tremors, and that characteristic staggered, shambling, or uneven movement that Mori identified as amplifying the uncanny effect. Rabies provides the perfect, lethal example of a dynamic anomaly.
So the psychological horror lies in the uncanny recognition. The infected person is recognizable kin. It's someone you are biologically programmed to protect, yet they are now the most lethal threat in your immediate environment.
And the uncanny valley instinct acts as a vital biological override. That intense, visceral revulsion provides the necessary cognitive distance to override the natural bonds of empathy and kinship.
So it's a switch.
The switch from "I must help my kin" to "I must flee this plague vector" is instantaneous and mandatory for the group's survival.
So if that's the ancient wiring, what does this look like today? I mean, now that rabies is relatively rare in developed countries.
We see this ancient fear translated into what we can term digital rabies.
Digital rabies.
Yeah. Look at the current wave of generative AI video, especially when the models hallucinate. Those viral clips where a person's face begins to melt, their hand merges with a spoon, or their jaw unhinges during speech.
The Will Smith eating spaghetti video.
The classic example. These are not just visual errors. Our brain's pathogen detection system interprets these visual violations as a catastrophic, fast-acting breakdown of biological integrity.
It's the visual instability itself that acts as the trigger.
A hand losing structural integrity is interpreted as rapid onset necrosis or mutation. A jaw unhinging triggers memories of disease-induced spasms. It's the highest expression of the false positive advantage playing out in a digital medium.
It's better to feel disgust and close the browser tab.
Then risk approaching something that visually suggests a lethal plague taking hold.
Okay, that covered the threat of the sick. So now we follow the logic of biological deterioration to its ultimate conclusion. Hypothesis the second, the threat of the dead.
The mortality salience hypothesis, which is rooted in terror management theory.
Right. So if the first hypothesis deals with avoiding lethal vectors, this one deals with avoiding lethal ideas.
A very good way to put it. It suggests that the uncanny valley acts as a critical psychological defense against the realization of one's own inevitable mortality. It helps us manage existential terror.
Let's go back to Mori's graph again, specifically the static trough where he placed the corpse. Why does the corpse, which is physically passive, pose such an active, fundamental threat to our psychology?
Because the corpse is the ultimate cognitive paradox. It possesses near-total human likeness, yet ontologically, it is merely an inert object.
Right.
It's devoid of agency, self-awareness, consciousness. It violates our core cognitive categorization, animate versus inanimate.
So the brain doesn't know what to do with it.
It tries to file it under human, but all the sensory input screams object. This ambiguity forces the mind to confront the most profound category error possible.
And this error directly threatens our elaborate psychological defenses, which is where terror management theory, or TMT, comes in.
Exactly. TMT argues that humans live in this sort of paralyzing fear of death, and to function, we create complex cultural worldviews and psychological defenses to repress the knowledge of our own non-existence.
We pretend it's not going to happen to us.
We have to. But the corpse shatters that defense. It is the ultimate undeniable memento mori.
A reminder of death.
The most powerful one. So the uncanny feeling in this context serves two profound psychological functions.
Okay, what's the first function?
It enforces separation. The revulsion creates a necessary emotional buffer, forcing the observer to immediately categorize the corpse or the hyperrealistic wax figure or the android as eerie, other, and fundamentally not me.
It stops you from identifying with it.
It prevents identification and buffers the existential terror that this state of inert objecthood is my own ultimate destination.
And the second function deals with the removal of the evidence.
Yes, it motivates disposal. While the hygiene aspect of burying or cremating the dead is critical for pathogen avoidance, that's part one, the psychological need to remove the corpse is driven by this terror management function.
We need to get it out of sight.
The intense revulsion ensures that the physical reminder of death is quickly and permanently removed from the immediate environment, allowing our psychological defenses, our belief in our own enduring significance, to reassert themselves.
I think this also explains why we find hyperrealism in static figures, like those wax mannequins, so deeply unsettling, even if we know they aren't actively infectious.
It's the illusion of specialness. Many people operate under a defensive mechanism that views the self as unique, possessing an intangible soul or special quality that separates them from mere objects.
Right.
The uncanny entity, the perfect wax figure, the motionless android, threatens this belief by demonstrating that the boundary between the unique human and the inert object is incredibly fragile.
So the recoil is our ego protecting itself.
The emotional recoil of the uncanny valley, the ego fighting back, rejecting the entity that threatens the belief in our own enduring non-physical specialness.
We've covered the threat of the sick, pathogen avoidance, and the threat of the dead, mortality salience. Now we move to hypothesis the third. This is arguably the most provocative and historically profound idea.
The hominid threat hypothesis.
Or the Neanderthal theory.
This is where we have to step back, way back, maybe 400,000 years into the evolutionary fog. This theory argues that the valley is a vestigial species recognition system.
A system developed during a period when Homo sapiens coexisted and fiercely competed with other parallel human species.
It's so easy to forget that. For hundreds of thousands of years, Homo sapiens was just one player in a very competitive field of hominids.
We weren't alone.
We're definitely not alone. For a vast evolutionary stretch, anatomically modern humans shared territory with Neanderthals across Europe and the Middle East, and with Denisovans across Asia.
And these weren't, ape-like ancestors.
Not at all. They were parallel humans. They were equipped with complex tools, fire, culture, social structures. They were highly robust apex predators and direct competitors for every single vital resource.
The best caves, the best hunting ground.
The prime ecological niches, everything.
And their appearance, according to modern reconstructions, lands them squarely in the uncanny zone.
They exhibit the uncanny phenotype perfectly. It's 90% human, 10% fundamentally off.
What are those off features?
Well, look at forensic reconstructions based on skeletal remains. You have features like the heavy projecting brow ridge, the larger flared nose adapted for cold, dry air, the lack of a prominent chin, and the longer lower cranial shape.
So to an early AMH, an anatomically modern human, this was the definition of Bukimi no Tani.
It was. A face that should signal kin and cooperation. But something about it signaled rival and danger.
So the uncanny valley could have functioned as a mandatory speciation mechanism. It drew a powerful emotional boundary during a very high-stakes competitive era.
It would have served two critical evolutionary functions. First, preserving genetic integrity.
Okay.
Now, we know interbreeding occurred. Most modern Europeans and Asians carry Neanderthal DNA. But the uncanny response could have acted as a prezygotic isolation mechanism.
Basically a biological turnoff.
Exactly. An instinctive barrier to prevent mating with a genetically disparate species, thereby preserving the distinct adaptations of the Homo sapiens lineage.
That's the reproductive function. What about the immediate survival function? In the moment.
That's identity signaling. In a world defined by tribal warfare and resource scarcity, the ability to instantly discriminate between us, kin, and them, rival, was a matter of life and death.
You had to know in a split second.
Split second. The uncanny valley takes those subtle morphological differences, a slightly heavier brow, a different gait, and amplifies them into a powerful emotional command. Do not approach, do not trust, prepare for confrontation.
It's an instinctual recognition of a competitor that is too similar to ignore but too different to embrace.
The ambiguous entity is always the dangerous one.
And it's profoundly haunting to think that when artists create these soft tissue reconstructions of archaic humans, modern viewers often find them instantly uncanny.
Even though we have no cultural memory of them.
None at all.
It suggests a biological memory. A ghost of an ancestral instinct is still active within our nervous system. That intense revulsion you feel at an android that looks slightly off is a neural echo of what your ancestor felt when they saw a group of Neanderthals emerging from the mist 40,000 years ago.
It was the signal that competition was imminent.
And potentially lethal.
Okay, so building directly on that idea of hominid threat, let's drill down into a specific, fascinating detail that explains why modern robots so often feel soulless.
The cooperative eye hypothesis.
The importance of the human eye.
This is such a crucial element of our social wiring. It all revolves around the white sclera, the whites of the eyes.
And we're unique in that, right?
Anatomically, modern humans are almost unique among primates in possessing a highly visible white sclera. Chimpanzees, gorillas, most other mammals have dark, pigmented sclera that makes it almost impossible to discern the direction of their gaze.
So what massive functional advantage does having white eyes grant us?
It allows for incredibly sophisticated nonverbal communication known as shared attention or gaze cueing.
I can tell where you're looking.
Instantly, and often peripherally. We know where another human is looking, and this facilitates complex cooperation coordinating a hunt, silently warning a neighbor of danger, or even just confirming intentions. This ability to share attention is absolutely vital for advanced cooperative social behavior.
And the hominid divergence theory hypothesizes that Neanderthals and Denisovans likely retain the dark pigmented sclera of our common ancestors.
That is the leading hypothesis. And if so, to an anatomically modern human, a Neanderthal or Denisovan would have appeared to have black eyes or day eyes.
Their intentions would have been unreadable.
Completely unreadable. Their gaze would have been non-committal.
And that leads directly to the soulless gaze we see in horror tropes. Aliens, demons, or indeed the uncanny androids like the Geminoids, it's a literal biological sign of non-cooperation.
The unreadable gaze is a massive threat signal. It instantly triggers the amygdala, the brain's fear center, because it signals a non-reciprocal agent whose intentions cannot be predicted and thus cannot be trusted.
If you can't tell where they're looking,
you can't coordinate with them, and you cannot predict if they're an ally or an interest-specific threat.
Which connects perfectly to our final related hypothesis, psychopathy avoidance. The Uncanny Valley warns us about betrayal from within our own group.
Absolutely. The lack of proper emotional affect or the absence of a synchronized startle response in the eyes is a clinical marker of psychopathy.
So psychopaths are, in a sense, the ultimate uncanny entities.
They are. They possess 100% human likeness, but zero emotional reciprocity or ability to engage in shared attention. The Valley may function as an instinctual mechanism honed to flag these individuals, the intraspecific predators who are capable of exploiting or killing within the group.
So whether it was a rival hominid in the bush or a cold-eyed psychopath in the tribe,
the uncanny feeling warns you to maintain emotional and physical distance.
Wow. Okay, we've established 3 distinct ancient survival systems, all firing off the same few visual cues. It's time to bring this all together in the synthesis, the unified threat avoidance model.
Right. The Uncanny Valley, Bukimi no Tani, is not generated by a single threat. It's generated by the convergence of multiple overlapping survival domains.
It's useful to think of it as, like, the human brain has an ancient threat dashboard.
That's a great analogy.
And the uncanny feeling is the unique, paralyzing dread that results when 2 or all 3 of those lights flicker red simultaneously.
That's perfect. So let's run through that dashboard summary, matching the threat to the modern triggers.
Let's do it.
The first pillar is the biological threat. It's signaled by cues like erratic gait, facial spasms, clammy texture, skin lesions.
The evolutionary danger there is lethal contagion, rabies, leprosy, things like that.
Right. And this is triggered today by zombies, glitchy deepfake videos, and any CGI that fails to properly render organic tissue, creating that plastic appearance.
Okay, pillar 2.
The second pillar is the existential threat. This is signaled by stillness, pallor, cold touch, and a lack of agency.
The danger is mortality, necrosis, and existential dread. Triggered by corpses, hyper-realistic wax figures, and any static android that looks like it should be breathing but isn't.
And the third pillar is the competitive social threat. It's signaled by deviant facial morphology, like a too heavy brow and unreadable or dead eyes.
The dangers are resource competition, hybridization risks, and interest-specific predation, so a psychopath.
Exactly. And this is triggered by reconstructions of rival hominids, horror movie monsters, and highly realistic robots that fail the gaze cueing test.
The core question remains, though. What is the single common neurological mechanism underneath all these feels? Why does this ambiguity short-circuit our entire system?
The mechanism is categorical ambiguity, which is explained by processing fluency theory.
Okay.
The human brain is a massive prediction engine. Its primary job is to sort sensory data into discrete, readily processable categories to maximize speed and efficiency. Is it alive or dead? Human or animal? Threat or ally?
It needs to put things in boxes.
It needs to put things in boxes quickly. This is called processing fluency, the ease with which information is handled.
And the entity in the Uncanny Valley is the ultimate fluency disruption.
It generates a prediction error, a
Yeah.
huge one. The uncanny entity defies categorization. It looks human, but has features of arrival. It appears alive because it moves, but feels cold and dead on contact.
The boxes don't work.
The brain attempts to classify it, but the conflicting data sets, visual, tactile, behavioral, result in a massive category failure. This internal conflict generates a prediction error that is processed in specific areas of the brain. The anterior cingulate cortex, which monitors error and conflict, and the insula, which processes visceral emotional experiences like disgust.
So the resulting feeling of dread isn't just fear, it's the physical experience of the brain screaming, I cannot predict what this thing will do.
Exactly. Since the entity is unpredictable and defies all established safe categories, the system defaults immediately to the safest option available: fear, visceral disgust, and the powerful mandate for avoidance. The uncanny feeling is the emotional signature of neurological gridlock.
This detailed evolutionary framework completely changes how we interpret modern technological phenomena. So let's look at the present and the future through this lens, starting with the possibility of habituation.
Right.
Can we train away an ancient defense system?
Well, research involving highly realistic androids, like the Geminoid HI-2, which is a stunningly accurate replica of its creator, Professor Hiroshi Ishiguro, gives us key insight into this.
Okay.
The plasticity of the Uncanny Valley response. Initial, brief reactions to the robot are classic uncanny revulsion. People hate it.
Sure.
However, repeated, long-term interaction with the robot, where the subject understands its function and behavior, can significantly reduce the effect.
That suggests the valley isn't an impenetrable wall then. It's more of a malleable boundary we can learn to adapt.
This is a demonstration of evolutionary plasticity. Just as early humans might have eventually learned to tolerate a neighboring tribe whose physical markers were subtly different, modern humans can learn the category of android.
The brain creates a new box.
The brain eventually creates a new, safe bucket for this ambiguous entity, not human, not object, but robot with human features. And that resolves the cognitive dissonance and reduces the anxiety over time.
But there's a critical counterpoint to this idea, isn't there? The idea that we are in a kind of perceptual arms race with our technology.
That's the critical tension. Researchers point out that while we can habituate to a specific static model, the technology continues to advance rapidly.
It's a moving target.
It is. As technology improves, rapidly closing the gap on 100% realism, human sensitivity may also sharpen. The brain remains vigilant. The valley remains functional as a high-stakes discrimination tool, especially relevant in the context of subconscious assessments of genetic fitness and mate selection, where detecting subtle flaws remains crucial.
So every time a new AI model improves rendering fidelity,
Our evolutionary detection system gets a software update to find the new remaining flaw.
and we have to return to the current wave of generative AI video, which is providing the most profound demonstration of the pathogen avoidance hypothesis in modern history.
Oh, absolutely. The current state of generative video, output from platforms like Sora or Runway, has birthed a genre of horror that is unintentional but biologically effective.
These videos where people walk backward unnaturally, fingers merge and unmerge, or faces stretch and melt, they're not just poorly rendered, you're saying they're biologically offensive.
They are, because they perfectly mimic the visual signature of catastrophic biological disintegration.
So the visual instability itself is the direct trigger.
It is. A hand losing its structural integrity is interpreted as rapid onset necrosis. A face that constantly morphs triggers the signal of mutation or severe uncontrolled pathological breakdown.
Our ancient brain is kicking in.
Our pathogen avoidance system, honed over millions of years of avoiding the sick and the dying, screams that the organism we are watching is fundamentally unstable, non-viable, and possibly contagious. The AI glitches are interpreted by our ancient brain as rapid tissue failure demanding immediate avoidance.
The Uncanny Valley, Ben, is not a failure of our technological endeavors. It's a profound, necessary success of our ancient programming.
That's a great way to summarize it.
It's the legacy of a time when the distinction between human and almost human was literally the difference between survival and a lethal threat.
It is a feature, not a glitch. And we have inadvertently created a technological mirror that activates the ghost of our evolutionary past.
We are building machines that look like the cousins we fought
Move with the gait of the sick we avoided.
and stare like the dead we buried.
Hmm.
It forces us to confront the humbling fact that our most immediate visceral reactions are rooted in threat templates that have been physically extinct for tens of thousands of years.
And that biological legacy dictates the limits of our technological progress.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought. If we can learn to tolerate androids through habituation, if we can create a new mental category for the demonoids, essentially retraining our threat detection system to accept this new ambiguous entity, does that mean our most powerful ancient defense mechanism, the ability to distinguish us from almost us, is ultimately trainable?
It is a profound vulnerability, if so. Because if the brain can be trained to override that instinctual alarm when the entity is a benign android, what happens when we eventually create entities that are 99% human, fully autonomous, and hostile? That arms race between technology and human perception may be the most crucial evolutionary challenge of the next century.
Something to think about as you scroll through your next social media feed and encounter the latest masterpiece or malfunction of generative AI. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.